Hello, class, and welcome to, I think, my favorite topic of all of the entire course, and that is grassroots fundraising and managing volunteers. I've done a lot of this. Seriously, and it is a different way of thinking about and looking at um, basically nonprofit fundraising, generally speaking. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's just skip straight into the PowerPoint. Today we'll be talking about grassroots resource development. And I particularly want to talk about this with you because the book talks about it from a very different angle than I do. So first we'll talk about my 3 tips on volunteer management, and we'll go through how I define grassroots fundraising and how it differs from what the book does. We'll talk about asset-based community development, which is something that used to be done out of the University of Chicago, and now is being done out of DePaul University in Chicago. And we'll talk about time banking and how that fits into asset-based community development and asset maps, which is your assignment for the week. So I'll show you exactly what you need to do to succeed on your assignment this week. I have 3 rules of volunteer management. I don't want to belabor it because you have plenty of really good tips. The chapter on volunteer management is very good in this book, and I think you should definitely take it seriously and take it with you into your nonprofit life, into your work life. The first rule that I have is to train your volunteer supervisor. In other words, it's not enough to train the volunteers. Whoever needs a volunteer to help them on a particular day also needs to have training in what to do with volunteers. They need to know how to welcome them, how to inform them, how to thank them, how to treat volunteers, and what to do with volunteers, right? More than just the 3 rules that I'm giving you here, it should look a lot like that chapter that you have in the book. Rule number 2 is make sure that you have enough work, right? Volunteers are not effortless. You don't just say, oh, there's a volunteer coming and then forget about it. You don't try to get, 6 volunteers and only have 1 computer available, right? You need to make sure that you have enough work in advance. That means that you do have to put in about an hour and a half of work for every hour of volunteering that takes place in your business. Now, once volunteers, if you have volunteers who come back regularly over and over again, they're the most useful because they don't need that work in advance. Usually you can help them just find the job that they're going to be doing during the work. But in general, you are going to have to do a lot of preparation to make sure they have enough work and the right kind of work for a variety of different volunteers. Rule number 3 is you need to brief and debrief every shift. You need to start off with an initiation, even if they've been there 100 times. You need to say, how's everything going? Do you know what you're doing? What can I show you? This is new this week. This is not. And at the end of the shift, you need to ask them, how did it work out? You need to say, is there anything that I could change to make it easier for you? And you need to ask and you need to thank them. You very purposefully thank them at the beginning and at the end of every shift. All right? That's all I'm going to say on volunteers. The rest you can basically get from the book. Here's where I differ from the book. Grassroots, essentially, in the book, was defined as getting a lot of individual contributors. That's not how I define grassroots. Grassroots, in my understanding, and from having done a lot of community organizing, a lot of grassroots fundraising, a lot of what I would call grassroots, is empowering individuals in a community to serve themselves. Right? So for fundraising, that looks like empowering individuals to raise their own money to help their own communities. One of the things I love about this job is that I get to empower you all to go out and do amazing things in your communities. So essentially, we're working with grassroots right now, right? You are the grassroots, you're the leaders, and I'm the follower, and you're showing me what you need to succeed. Oftentimes, grassroots are non-financial resources. They can be converted to financial resources, but they are often non-financial resources. For a fundraising class, what does that mean? Well, we'll talk about that a little later. They are sustainable because these are the people who are there, who are being affected, and they will be there forever, right? So when you train, when you empower someone who's actually on the ground to start taking charge of their own community and give them the resources to do that, and that's the key. That's where you come in, is to find out what resources they actually want and need and give them those resources. And when you do that, it's sustainable. It happens, hopefully, eventually, it becomes self-sustaining, where you don't have to do anything at all and you can move on to another community, another area, and do it there. It is harder to manage, right? First of all, it's more difficult to secure grants and donations and everything, right? Because you've got 50 people who all think they're in charge, because they all are, right? Also, it's hard to talk about for grants. Grants like to say, you're going to be doing this, this, and this. And then we want you to report this, this, and this variables, right? But when you're doing it with the grassroots, you can't say you're going to do this, this, and this. You can say, I'm going to talk to the people in the community who are having the problem and see what they need. Right? So it's harder to manage grassroots. Your job becomes more difficult, but I think more rewarding. So grassroots fundraisers, it's the same thing. It's harder to manage. One of my favorite methods for grassroots development, really, is asset-based community development. Like all my methods that I like Benavon and the book and the CRMs that we're using for managing data, right? You need to take pieces of it and use those pieces that you like and then throw out the rest. But asset-based community development is a good thing to know about. It's it has a lot of tools that you can use to make your nonprofits raise more money and be more effective, right? Asset-based community development is based on 3 principles. 1, assets, not deficits. You look at communities in need. You look at places like the Sun Valley area, and you say, what are the assets here? What can we help with? Right? You do want to do that eventually, but your first thing that you ask is, what do they already have? What resources are here that we can use? You know, and that they can use to make the community better. It's also geographically focused. I can envision asset-based community development that's not based on a neighborhood or a community or a city. And it's not always urban, although it is associated often with urban, but some of the best asset-based community development projects have been in rural Native American tribes. But it is often mostly used with a geographical focus. You pick a particular area. However, it can also be based on a geographically larger nonprofit. One of the things I immediately thought of was opening up a farm essentially for foster children, right? So, and it builds community capacity. Okay, the point of asset-based community development is to build capacity in that geographical area by identifying assets and giving those assets more resources so that they can become more powerful assets and connecting them with other assets. That's the point of asset-based community development. And if you want to read more about it, please go to the ABCD Institute. And just look it up, ABCD Institute. You can pause it right now. Go over there, check it out. It's got a lot of great tools, including books and other resources. One of the things that asset-based community development uses is time banking. This is the concept that one person gives their skill and puts it into a time bank. You don't monetize it in any way. You just say, I'm a lawyer, which I am, and I'll put in 1 hour of lawyering time into this time bank. In result, after I put in my 1 hour of lawyering time into that time bank, I hope that someday I'll look through the time bank and find a painter who has 1 hour of time, who wants to have 1 hour of time to come into my house and put in 2 hours of time in time bank painting my house. And then I'll put in another hour of time helping the piano teacher to write a contract so that she can have her piano students. And then she'll put in an hour of time helping out a third person. So it's this very interesting idea. There's no big time bank for Denver. There are some communities that have tried time banks. They haven't worked a lot with communities largely, like entire cities. But they have worked with smaller nonprofits. It's a great tool to use in a nonprofit to actually start banking your volunteers' time and offering time in exchange for time with volunteers. If you can open up a small time bank where people are exchanging time, you can get a lot of resources and also help whatever community that you actually happen to be using. So if you have community members or clients who have skills like painting or construction or are lawyers or whatever else, you can use your client skills and put them into a time bank and exchange those for other skills, thereby creating resources that you really couldn't buy using money, right? You couldn't buy your neighbor helping out another neighbor and getting that connection. But using time banking, you can do that. If you want to know more about time banking, I hope it makes sense to you. What you actually do is you go online and you type in, I am volunteering my time for 1 hour to help my neighbor to, in my case, I would write a contract for them, right? Or do some research for them. And then my neighbor would go on and say, I am going to make up that 1 hour by going out and painting someone's house. And that person whose house was painted would say, well, I'm going to go and tune a piano. I need my piano tuned, so I call that piano tuner, right? So that's how it works, and it's all online. You can actually do these things online. There are time bank software and internet services available for nonprofits that are interested in using this. So you can see how this would be able to save you money, right? It might not be able to make you money, although it might. Maybe one of the people in the time bank is a graphic artist, and you can get them to design your next advertisement for your next fundraiser, right? But it might not make you money, but it could save you money. Say you have somebody who is a web designer who's in the time bank that you've set up. You can ask that web designer to come in and earn an hour in the time bank setting up your new website, right? Maybe it'd be more like 15 hours if they were setting up your website. But yeah, that's the premise. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is the asset mapping, which is your assignment for the day. Asset mapping is taking all of the assets that you can find in a particular, usually geographical, but not always geographical location. So it can be like a Facebook page, right? Or a family. You take all the assets that you can find and you put them down in one place and think about them to see how we can connect them, right? I'm going to give you 2 examples that I've put into your files in your classroom files under the Grassroots folder. So you can actually pull up either of these examples. These are from Asset-Based Community Development website, the ABCD site. And the first one is the organizational asset map. You might not be able to see it because it's a little small, but like I said, pull it up in your from the class under the folder Grassroots. In an organization, you would look at your own assets, such as your personnel, your constituents, that means your clients, right, for a nonprofit, your space and facilities, your expertise. What sort of expertise do you have that you might be able to offer to the neighborhood? Networks and connections, your materials and equipment, and your economic power, your money, right? Or your other ways that you can wield money. Can you hire people? Can you help people? Can you build things, right? For this class, I'm going to have you do a community asset map. I want you to look at your nonprofit as merely one asset within the larger community. Here's the types of assets that I want you to look at. I want you to look at the associations. Your nonprofit should be one of the institutions in this community, right? But associations include religious groups, women's groups, business groups. So say that you were in Florida, right? And you had 3 acres of land that you wanted to turn into foster care facility. You might know that nearby there's a farmer's market, right? And that farmer's market might be run by an association of some kind. So you might want to use that association, that town association or that neighborhood association, to help you to sell your wares that you're going to create on your farm, right? So you want to identify 4 different associations that are in the community, however you define that community, whether it's geographical or the people that you help or your donors, whatever it is. Find 4 different associations that are in that community. That can include religious groups, women's groups, and business groups. Also institutions, schools, hospitals, libraries, nonprofits. If you want more ideas, look at the community asset map that I've given you in the folder. Individuals, That includes your clients. There may be youth, there may be people with disabilities or veterans or activists, right? They might be people, in foreign countries. They might be children in foreign countries, right? We can look at them as needs, right? These children might be needs, or we could look at them as assets, people who can tell you what they need, people who can also do certain things. Maybe the children in these foreign countries can write letters to other people to help request funds or to request help, or maybe they can connect you with someone. So rather than looking at the individuals as deficits that need help, you can look at them as assets that are a potential boon to their own benefit, right? That's the crucial part here, is you don't want to get focused on benefiting the nonprofit. You want to benefit your clients, right? But looking at your clients as potential assets to benefit themselves, that's the important part about ABCD. Physical space, parks, playgrounds, natural habitat, like I said, the 3 acres of land in Florida, or a recreation center in Sun Valley, right? Local economy, businesses, banks, or tourists. Tourists are also part of the local economy. Sometimes tourists are not looked on as an asset. They can be a deficit, a problem that needs to be solved, right? Sometimes gentrifiers, people say new people moving in the neighborhood are gentrifiers, but maybe they could be looked at as a local economic asset and attempted to wield in that way. And by connecting these assets, you can maybe potentially limit gentrification, right? Or help gentrification to help the people who are already there. So that's asset-based community development. And that is what I perceive as grassroots fundraising, right? Now, why do I perceive it as grassroots fundraising? Because it does 3 things. You can convert funds, you can convert these assets into funds. You can turn them into money. I've done it many times. You can use them as examples when applying for a grant. You can also ask them to host a fundraiser on your behalf so that they can get something in particular. So you can say, hey, you want a new playground. Let's raise money for that playground. Who can we get in our community to help us raise that money? And then who can we get to volunteer to call people? You might have a list. You can create a list and call people, right? Which is what we did last week, creating our list. What assets can save you funds? So, like for example, the piano tuner. You have an event coming up and you need the piano tuned. That could save your nonprofit some money, right? Or a graphic designer or a web designer, right? What assets can do something that funds simply cannot? By identifying children as assets who can connect with other community members, there's no other way you can connect with community members. You can't use money to do that. All you can do is identify children as assets to communicate with other community members, their parents maybe, or maybe other children. It seems, if you're not careful, you can look at children as assets to advertise something, right? And then make them into victims. But you can also look at children as ways to communicate something and to connect with others, right? So that's why it's fundraising. That's why this is about money, saving money, earning money, and getting things that you can't get with money. Next week, we're going to be going back to the language guide, creating a budget, and talking about major donors. All right. So start looking ahead a little bit, because we are going to have our first draft of the development plan, or at least the first part of the development plan, will be coming up soon. It's going to have the language guide. It's going to have how you're going to be recording data, and it's going to be having a small budget. And I'll just give you a tutorial on how to put together your own little profile. Really, it's more of a profile than a budget. So you're going to say, I'm going to get this much money from major donors, this much money from grants, etc. So we'll talk about that then. Thank you for your time, and thanks for watching us all the way to the end. Zoom in with me on Monday and Wednesday, 11 to 1 Mountain Time, at Zoom number 309-203-2332. Or you can call and text me at any time at 970-236-6311. I shut that down at night, so you can even text me in the middle of the night, and I'll get it in the morning when my phone turns back on. So that's 970-236-6311. Thanks a lot for your time, and I'll see you all again very soon. Maybe too soon.